Out of the over 1,000 Pokemon that exist today, none have the potential quite like Eevee. It embodies the very essence of what Pokemon is all about, with the choices you make as a trainer impacting the way it grows. It's no wonder how over the years, Eevee has solidified itself as a series mascot right next to Pikachu. It even gets its own holiday, celebrated on November 21st each year. Not many Pokemon can share that achievement. The only other one I can think of is Pidgey, but Pidgey Day isn't until
April 17th.
So in honor of Eevee Day this year, I have made it my mission to catch a shiny Eevee in every mainline Pokemon region. That's 9 regions, which, coincidentally, is how many members of the Eevee family there are. For all intents and purposes, I am just going to be hunting in the main regions, so I don't really care about, like, Kitakami and Ore? How do you pronounce that one? The Pokemon XD region. Hunting Eevee in that one is really obnoxious and takes like 5 minutes to encounter one Eevee, so like, no. Because then it's like, where do I stop? Do I have to get the shiny Eevee figure for Pokemon Rumble U? Do I have to get a shiny Eevee in Pokemon Sleep? Because actually I did get one during Eevee week. Whatever, first stop, Kanto. There are a few options for hunting in Kanto, but I chose to chain Eevees in Let's Go. Technically, you're supposed to keep catching the Eevees, and then the first Pokemon that spawns afterward has a higher chance of being shiny, but I only had a limited number of Pokeballs, and I didn't feel like grinding for money. So all I did was get the chain to 31 to max out the spawn rate, and just wait until— oh! Eevee can fly? Pidgey, what are you doing here? It's not April 17th. So I maxed out the spawn rate and just waited until a shiny shows up. For 6 hours until eventually a shiny Eevee did appear, officially beginning our shiny Eevee journey. This one's name will be Stanley, and it shall become a Flareon. Onward to Johto, where we'll be using the shiny breeding method in Pokemon Crystal. Basically, any Pokemon you breed with a shiny Ditto will have a 1 in 64 chance of being shiny, and I just so happen to have a shiny Ditto. Yes, I used the shiny Ditto trick to get it, but technically, you can't prove that it wasn't shiny before I caught it. Actually, you can, but it doesn't matter because we're hunting Eevee today. So I started making batches of 20 eggs each, and honestly, even though the shiny rate is so high, this hunt feels like it takes forever since the bike is so slow and abilities like Flame Body don't exist yet. Eventually, I did get the shiny Eevee on the second batch of eggs with 24 total hatched. Out of curiosity, I did hatch the rest of the eggs too, and did not find any more shinies. This Eevee is special. His name will be Ronald, and Ronald shall evolve into Espeon. For the Hoenn region, we're going to use the DexNav in Omega Ruby to find our Eevee. Maybe this is just me gushing a bit, but I think the DexNav is my favorite shiny hunting method ever. I just like the idea that as your search level increases, your shiny rate also increases permanently. It also doesn't take much focus, and you can even find shinies with hidden abilities and egg moves. I got the shiny Eevee here at search level 454, meaning my shiny rate at the time was about 1 in 658, so I got it decently below odds. This Eevee will be named Arnold and shall evolve into Vaporeon, because too much water. Next up is the Sinnoh region, and I had a couple options for this one. I could find an Eevee outbreak in Legends Arceus since Hisui and Sinnoh are the same region, but I decided to go with the Poké Radar and Brilliant Diamond. Eevee only appears in Mr. Backlot's garden, and the special Pokemon that appears there changes every morning. Fortunately, there is a set order to the Pokemon that appear there, so since Cast Form is appearing today, I should only need to wait, Alright, Eevee time. So all we have to do is start an Eevee chain and hopefully find a shiny. Spams_ on Reddit did some calculations and concluded that shooting for a 17 chain is, on average, the most reliable way to find a shiny. My first chain took about a half hour to start since Eevee only has a 5% spawn rate, and broke after a chain of 8. So not off to a very good start. Yet somehow, on my second chain, I was able to make it to 17, and found the shiny patch with Eevee in it an hour later. So overall, could have been worse. This Eevee has earned the name Patrick and shall evolve into a Glaceon. To hunt shiny Eevee in Unova, I don't really have a lot of choices. This was honestly the hunt I was dreading the most. At first, I thought it would be a good idea to try the Masuda method in Black 2. It seems like young Coconut had some foresight, since I had apparently gotten the shiny charm and a foreign Ditto over a decade ago when the game came out, meaning my shiny odds with the Masuda method were 1 in 1024. I started doing batches of 60 eggs each, and I quickly realized how much these newer games spoil us with quality of life features. Even with Flame Body, it still took about 3 hours for each batch of 60 eggs. After finishing the second batch, I tried looking to see if there were any other ways to do this. Luckily, there was. Eevee can appear in the wild, but only in this specific area of Castelia City. I initially brushed this off since Eevee only has a 5% spawn rate, but I hadn't realized Eevee is the only Pokemon that can appear at level 19. So, by putting a level 19 in front of the party and using a repel, that 5% turns into 100%. The only downside is the spawn rate in that area kind of sucks in general, so it takes a while to actually find an Eevee. There are a few ways to boost the encounter rate. Black Dead the Dark Side on YouTube used a Staryu with Illuminate to help with that, so I stole their idea. You can also use pass powers to increase encounters, but I really don't feel like learning how to use that, so Staryu will have to do. After switching to the repel trick, it only took a few hours and 743 encounters to find our Univin shiny Eevee. This one's name is Ernesto, and it shall become a Leafeon. I then realized I probably could have just waited a few weeks until the Indigo disc drop since Blueberry Academy is in the Unova region, and I would be able to Masuda method there with much better odds, but forget about that, it's time to move on to Kalos. While the shiny hunt in Unova was the one I was most worried about physically, the Kalos shiny hunt was the one I was afraid of mentally. I decided I was going to find this shiny Eevee with the Poké Radar. After all, you would think since getting the shiny Eevee in Sinnoh was so easy, Kalos would probably be easy too. You see, I am a very low risk taker when it comes to shiny hunting. I don't hunt in the Safari Zone, I always bring a Master Ball and let's go in case my first ball misses. To me, the Poké Radar is the most stressful form of shiny hunting. I am always on edge, afraid my chain will break and all the work I put in so far would be for nothing. To me, a Poké Radar chain breaking is like nails on a chalkboard, just the worst feeling I can think of. So I started doing my research into the Poké Radar mechanics in Gen 6, but as it turns out, nobody really knows how the Poké Radar works in X and Y. I was initially under the impression that X and Y hadn't been data mined, since most guides, even on Bulbapedia, just say, it's probably like Diamond and Pearl. You just have decoy patches and sometimes the music is different. So in my naivety, I was only willing to get the Poké Radar up to a 10 chain since I was afraid of my chain breaking. After all, even at a low chain of 10, you would think it would be better than the full 1 in 4096 odds, right? Well, I burned through 250 of my 300 super repels with no shiny patch, at which point I just decided to keep chaining and make it as far as I could, which was not really much further. I then bought another 200 super repels and restarted my chain. Yellow on YouTube has a nice guide on how to start an Eevee chain in an area that has a high Eevee spawn rate and move it to a spot that's better for chaining. I was just very unlucky, with multiple chains breaking, sometimes in the high 20s. Eventually, I found a guide by HP4003 on YouTube that shows the most ideal spots to hunt on each route, as well as just decent tips overall based on what seems like an absurd amount of research. It's also because of them that I found this person on Twixter who claims to have data mined Poké Radar details in X and Y in this post from 5 years ago with 50 likes. I don't know why this information hasn't spread more publicly, but there appears to be a formula to determine shiny rate at different chain lengths. According to them, at a chain of 10, my shiny rate was only 1 in 6100, and only for fast shaking patches, so I was actually chaining with worse than full odds. With this newly acquired information, I was able to build up the courage to make it to a chain of 36, where I reset until I finally found my shiny Eevee. It only took about 15 hours and all of my sanity, but we have acquired Leonard, who shall evolve into Jolteon. After losing my mind hunting in Kalos, I was ready for a nice, smooth Alolan vacation. I don't normally have good luck SOS chaining, but it can't really be worse than my luck with the Poké Radar. Eevee also has a 5% spawn rate here, but once you find one, they just keep on popping up. Although I did have to restart my chain once because I forgot Eevee had Sand Attack and none of my Pokemon were prepared. So I came back with a substituting Decidueye and I found the shiny Eevee after a chain of exactly 151.
That's how many original Pokemon there were!
This Eevee is named Debbie, and she will evolve into Umbreon because Ultra Moon. With only 2 Eevees left to find, it's time to head to Galar. The only way to really hunt for Eevee in Sword and Shield is either with wild encounters or Masuda method, so I decided to try my luck in the wild. At first, I was hunting on Route 4, but I moved to Balamir Lake where I could see better. Once you battle 500 of the same Pokemon, it'll have a 1 in 512 chance of being shiny if it has the gold aura around it. Doesn't really improve the odds too much, but it's better than nothing. I will say, I kind of hate Boltund now. I lost count of how many times it decided to charge at me. I was honestly afraid that I was gonna find a shiny Boltund before Eevee. Fortunately, the shiny Eevee appeared after only 326 battled. Her name is Linda, and she shall forever remain an Eevee. And with that, it's time to move on to the final hunt. In celebration of Eevee Day, there was a weekend that boosted Eevee's mass outbreak chance in Scarlet and Violet. First, we just head over to one of the outbreaks, and it's just that easy. This one's name is also Patrick, but spelled without the C, and it evolves into Sylveon. And with that, I have officially caught a shiny Eevee in every mainline Pokemon region. Thank you. Overall, it really wasn't too bad. The hardest part was learning to use the Poké Radar in X and Y, but to tell the truth, now that I know the mechanics, I feel like I'd be more willing to go back and hunt in Kalos again. The best part is now I get to officially be named the King of Shiny Eevees. Except that one, maybe one day. But for now, happy Eevee Day, Eevee-1.
Also, your king demands sacrifice.